Hi, that Paul guy again. A couple days ago, I made a video and I made a reference to picking up a tip that was a little bit of, I found out during a little bit of a collaboration with Joe in Ohio and Dave in California. We've worked together on a couple of different projects, and we were actually fumbling around with a project the other night. We were working with classes inside of other classes, or parent classes and child classes. What I've done is I went ahead and set something up. It wasn't important necessarily to show you how to set up classes. We've already done that. I already did that in another video. It's going to be a very similar way of trying to reference that when we're doing more than one class. In this case, you can see that I've set up a class called Vehicles, and inside that there's a child class, I guess you could say, it says it's Cars. There's a couple of variables inside that. I could have very easily set those variables up here, change those values here, whatever, bounce back and forth. But for the sake of showing you what I wanted to, the tip in this video, I went ahead and defined everything here. In this case, it refers back to this class here, Cars. The reference here, Cars, and Cars with a small c equals new cars. That's just giving a reference to the class so that we can go down and say, okay, cars.doors equals 2, cars.wheels equals 4, and cars.color equals the string blue. All of those were set right back here. So the line will print out. We've referenced each of those, and like I said, this exercise is to show you how to type all that out. It's just to show you a little bit of a tip or a trick that I figured out or found out when I was working on a project with Joe and Dave. So in this case, what we do is we're going to run it real quick, and boom, there it is. The car is blue with 4 wheels and 2 doors. Now it's like, okay, Paul, that's a lot, but what trick are you talking about? Because you're not making a whole lot of sense right now. Well, what it was is the proper way to actually do this is to go ahead and use something called getters and setters. If you're familiar with programming at all, you know that when you're working inside classes or referencing other classes, the proper way to exchange variables, reference variables, and things of that nature is to actually set a variable or get a variable. And that is going to go back and actually change that variable in the other class. Instead of just making a reference to it in vehicles, we're actually going to be changing it in cars because that's the proper way of doing it. It's much cleaner, and that way also when somebody else is going back and looking at your code, they can see exactly what you're doing and they don't have to fumble around with what did you mean, what were you trying to do, why did you do it this way. So the tip I've got is actually, instead of going through in cars like we have here, we can go back and we can say, okay, we'll set all these up separately and we'll type in all of our getters and all of our setters. Well, if you're using Eclipse, there's a shortcut under source, and I'm using NetBeans. It's a different project or different IDE, so that's not. I looked in there when I saw that tip, and I'm like, well, that's not there. So I started looking of a way, and what I found is that if you hit Alt and Insert, it brings you up a little menu, and there, one of those menu items is Getter and Setter. So you can go ahead and click on that and say you want to set all the getters and setters for your car's class, so you don't have to type everything out individually. This is also going to cut down on syntax errors. Boom, there they are. Set them all up for you. Get wheels, get doors, set doors, get color, set color. Then you go back here and you reference these on the other file, and we're going to be, oops, set doors. And in this case, we'll say 2. And did I do door or doors? I did doors. And we're going to go set wheels. Now, if you notice the structure, this is just a little bit different. It's not the equals. We're actually putting the parameter in the parentheses, just like we would if we were doing, say, a constructor or something like that, where it's looking for that parameter inside the, say, the curly braces. At this point, we're setting it just like random number also does that. A few other things do that, where you set your parameter inside, and I'm sure you guys have seen something similar to that before. Set color. In this case, let's go ahead and we're going to make it blue again. We don't have to capitalize it necessarily. Alright, so we've set all those in here, but again, this makes it a little bit bulky down here at the bottom when we're printing things out. The proper way to do that is this, then go and use the get. So you're going to get color here. And we're going to go over here. We're going to get wheels. And we're going to go ahead and get doors. Okay. And I hope everybody kind of follows along with that. But basically all I've done is I've now used our setters here and our getters there, and I should come up with the same exact thing. The car is blue with 4 wheels and 2 doors. Makes sense to me, and it looks, you know, pretty much like the last statement we had. So the tip here was not necessarily using getters and setters, but actually, obviously it's proper to do that, but how to get them to come up in this menu here, or in the class here. So I can add to that, because if you notice, if I hit Alt and Insert right now, it took those out. You no longer have getters and setters listed there. But if I did something like, a boolean for is flying, you never know. It could be a flying car. More than likely it's not, but that's okay. Now, since you've added a new variable, I could either go down here and type in again, you know, public boolean is flying on all that stuff, or I could just simply, since I've made an adjustment, Alt Insert. Again, we have the getters and setters. I can go ahead and put in flying is flying in that, and there it sets up. And then of course I could go back to vehicles and set up to where I could print that out or use that information as well. So the syntax, the form, all that stuff, and what's already set up and how to do a class, that wasn't really the design of this video. It was just a short tip that, like I said, credit goes out to both Joe and Dave, Joe in Ohio, Dave in California, who I've collaborated with a couple times. We were working on a project the other night where we were trying to make sure that we were using getters and setters and doing it properly, but it did find the tip, so it basically types it for us and we don't have to type it. Hopefully it's a helpful little tip. It's going to be necessary to do, you know, when you're actually trying to make sure you're coding the right way so people can read what's going on, and if somebody's working on something after you, that they know exactly what you're doing, and it's just good form. So hopefully it helps. If the video was helpful at all, of course give it a like. As always, you're welcome to subscribe, and until next time guys, probably in a couple days or so, I will see you again. Thanks to Dave and Joe both, and I will talk to you guys soon too. Thanks.